Did you turn it off?
Sorry, but I started it back.
Yeah, I think it's going to be in 2 pieces now.
Sorry. I was trying to zoom out.
I'll try and stitch them together. Okay, so phloem tubes move sugar and xylem tubes move water. Okay? And those are called vascular tissues. Vascular like veins. Have you ever heard of vascular, that word? Like a vascular surgeon. He works on veins and arteries and such. So it's like there's veins inside plants. Yes, question? Huh? Aubrey, did you have a question?
The sugar part moves the sugar.
The phloem moves the sugar. And the xylem moves the what?
Water.
Look at y'all knowing stuff. Another thing plants evolved to survive are seeds. Not all plants have seeds, but some of them do. And I'll show you the ones that have seeds in just a second. But a seed is a tough structure with a tough outer coat that we call a seed coat. And it's full of food, full of nutrients. And it's also got a little baby plant in it, the embryo. And the little baby plant can survive in the seed for many years. And it'll live off the stored food, these nutrients. And the seed coat is real tough and it's waterproof and it keeps water inside. And so this baby plant will just sit there, sometimes for years. And then if you throw it on the ground, the water will soak into the seed coat and the seed coat will break down and the plant will grow. They found rice seeds that are several thousand years old that grew into new plants. Isn't that cool? A lot of the stuff you eat are seeds. Rice, if you eat rice, you're eating seeds. You ever eat corn? Seeds. Why do we like to eat seeds? Because they got a lot of nutrients, a lot of stored food that we can eat. So we grow the plant, we let it produce seeds, and then we harvest the seeds. Grain, like for bread, those are all seeds. So, here's what you have now. Now that you understand all those different things that plants have, now you can understand this chart. This chart shows the evolution of plants. And it basically, plants evolved in kind of 3 tiers. It's a 3-tiered system. The first types of plants were non-vascular. They did not have any vascular tissue. They didn't have any tubes inside them that transport water and sugars up and down. There are 3 types of non-vascular plants. The liverworts, the mosses, and the hornworts. I'll show you pictures of these here. Liverworts, mosses, and hornworts are all non-vascular plants. You got to memorize this. That's what you got to know for this section. Liverworts, mosses, and hornworts. Let me show you some pictures of those. This is a picture of some mosses. Now, when I say the word moss, you probably think of Spanish moss that hangs down from our trees around here. But that's not a true moss. That's actually a flowering plant, which is more the more recent evolutionary thing. True mosses are tiny little plants. They don't have any vascular tissue, so they grow real low to the ground. And they're green, they're leafy, and it almost looks like green fuzz. You see covering that old branch right there is a bunch of green stuff. That's true moss. And this is what it looks like up close. And that's what it looks like even closer. Have you ever seen like a carpet of moss on the ground in the forest? Maybe on a rock next to a waterfall? That's what true moss is. And it's real small. It can't grow tall because it doesn't have vascular tissue. So there's no way to bring water up to the top of a tall plant. So it grows real short and just kind of lays on the ground and absorbs water from the ground. Yes?
Don't oak trees have a certain kind of moss that fire ants?
There is moss that kind of grows in kind of the recesses of an oak tree where water gets. Yeah. I'll show you some. We'll go out there one of these days and we'll look at some of the trees around here. And we'll see some of those mosses. I don't know what kind it is, whatever you're talking about. Probably so. You see that green felt there next to that waterfall? I took that picture in Ecuador. There's moss all over the place. That's the simplest first type of plant that ever was on the earth. Before there were trees and bushes and tall things, there was moss covering the rocks. Isn't that interesting? There's an up close of some of the moss reproductive structures. They reproduce using spores that travel through the air, kind of like how fungus reproduce. And that little thing that you see there is a little green plant called a hornwort. It's also, a hornwort is also a non-vascular plant. You see those things there? Those are its reproductive structures. They look like horns. They reminded somebody of horns, so they called them hornworts. But they're really small, tiny little plants that grow close to the ground. They can't get tall because they don't have vascular tissue. And then there's a third type called a liverwort. This plant right here, it looks like, it reminded somebody of a liver. Y'all know what the liver is? It's a big organ that sits in your body right about here, and sometimes people eat cow livers. Anyway, that's a liverwort. Do you have a question?
I was just trying to get
Yeah, I'm kind of going pretty fast here. I might not be able to write everything I'm putting up there. But that's a liverwort. There's my hand next to some liverworts that were I found in the rainforest in Ecuador. See all those liverworts? I was like, cool, liverworts. I've never seen these things live, just in pictures. And everyone around me was going, what are you doing? There's some liverworts on a rock, also in Ecuador. That lady doesn't look too happy, does she?
that lady.
Yeah. I hope she doesn't watch this video. There are, okay, so wait, let me go back here.
Do you know that lady?
Yeah, I do know that lady.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Do you think she follows your videos?
She was a teacher that was on the trip with us.
Do not. See the video.
So, these are the non-vascular plants. And then, again, those are low-growing plants. The next thing we have are the non-seed plants. These have vascular tissue, but they don't have seeds. So you see this branch says vascular. Everything that's on this branch has vascular tissue. Of the plants that have vascular tissue, that can grow real tall because they have vascular tissue, these don't have seeds, and these do have seeds. Let's look at the ones that don't have seeds first. They're called ferns, horsetails, and club mosses. Have you ever heard of ferns before? Have you ever heard, I don't know if you've heard of horsetails before, maybe you have, or club mosses. I'll show you pictures of all of these. I have plenty of pictures here. That's club moss. We call that a club moss. And it does have vascular tissue, so it can grow taller than mosses. They still don't grow very tall. The tallest ones are about that tall. And they have little clubs at the top that release spores. These still reproduce with spores. Seeds had not evolved yet when these lived on the ground. That's me holding some club mosses. See how happy I am? I was walking through the forest in North Carolina, and it's raining on me, and my dad were hiking, and it's raining, and then I stopped, and I was in an entire field of club mosses. And I was like, awesome, check this out. And my dad was like, I don't know what those are. And I'm like, they're club mosses. Now, these are called ferns, division Pterophyta. I always used to say I'm terrified of ferns because it's Pterophyta is the name of the division. I'm not really terrified of ferns, but it's a good way to remember it. Y'all seen ferns before, right? You see those kind around here all the time, those kind. If you look on the back of a fern frond, there are little brown dots. They're called sori that release spores. Have you ever seen the brown dots on the back of a fern? There they are up close. And they release little spores that float through the air and land, and eventually you'll grow a new fern plant there after some various things happen that we'll talk about later. But anyway, that's a giant fern. That's a tree fern I saw in the rainforest in Ecuador. They grow like 30 feet high, these huge fern trees. And that is called a horsetail. Sometimes they're called horsetail ferns. They also reproduce with spores. Another horsetail. More horsetails. More horsetails. That's me with some ferns. I'm terrified of them, or I'm terrifying them, or something. Something strange going on there. There's a little sori on the back of a fern frond. There's Logan pointing to some ferns. More sori. There's a whole class of kids next to ferns. Y'all know any of those kids?
See my brother.
Your brother's on there?
Yeah.
Where is he? What?
He's back. He's to the right. Keep going. Keep going. Right there.
Yeah. There?
Yep.
Nice.
Ansley. Morgan.
Huh.
They've all got like flare.
More ferns. More kids.
Paul Salmons.
Oh yeah, there's Paul.
Look, see the ferns up there?
Paul used to wear that giant green suit.
More ferns. More kids. That's Morgan Bryan. She just played in the World Cup. They lost.
Yeah, they lost the Ferns.
More ferns. More kids. They're terrified of ferns. More ferns. More kids.
There's a pajama.
There's the pajamas.
That was pajama day.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's the non-vascular. I'm sorry, that's the vascular non-seed plant. So let's go back. I'm going all the way back to this picture here. So we just did I just showed you ferns, horsetails, and club mosses. Club mosses were the ones I was holding in the picture in the North Carolina woods, and horsetails are those kind of long, thin things. And y'all know what ferns are. So those have vascular tissue, but they don't have seeds. All of those still reproduce with spores. This next group right here reproduces with seeds. And there's several different types of seed plants. They involve seeds that could last for a long time. See, spores will just die within a few days if they don't land somewhere where they can grow. But seeds can last for years. And that was an evolutionary advantage. So you have your ginkgos, your cycads, your neophytes, your conifers, and your anthophytes. Anthophytes are flowering plants. You ever heard of a flowering plant before? It produces flowers. And most of the plants you see outside are flowering plants. All the bushes that we plant around the school, they're all flowering plants. All the grass in the yards outside, those are flowering plants. If you don't cut the grass, they'll eventually grow tall enough they'll grow little flowers. And all the oak trees you see, those are all flowering plants. Most of the plants in the world are flowering plants, and they're the most recent to evolve. But we also have a lot of conifers out there, like all the pine trees you see, anything that has cones. You've probably never seen a neophyte before. We do have some cycads outside. I'll show you pictures of those. And you may never have seen a ginkgo tree before. Let me real quick before the bell rings here. Let me show you pictures of these. I'll take y'all out there and take some pictures with you. This is a cycad. Have you ever seen cycads? We get them right outside. And what they do is they have a little seed-producing structure in the middle. That thing inside in the middle of it produces seeds. Or pollen grains. If it's a male plant, it produces pollen grains. If it's a female plant, it produces seeds. There's some kids next to the cycads. More kids next to 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 cycads.
TJ.
More kids next to cycads. More kids next to cycads. More kids next to cycads. This type is called a neophyte, which is a desert plant that has these real leathery leaves. It has a long stem that goes down through the sand to reach the water. And these live for a real long time, up to 2,000 years. And they produce seeds right there at the top. Have you ever heard of ephedrine? That's kind of a chemical, kind of like caffeine that keeps you awake. And it's made by one of these types of neophytes, although it's a different type than this one. And then the ginkgo trees. Have you ever seen ginkgos? Ginkgos have like fan-shaped leaves. There's me next to a ginkgo tree. See those fan-shaped leaves? It's also called a maidenhair tree, because maidens used to wear the leaves in their hair back in the old days, I guess. And then the conifers. Y'all seen cones like pine cones? Hey, there's me next to a redwood tree. There's me in a redwood tree. There's me hugging a redwood tree. There's me hugging a giant redwood tree.